Huh?
So basically, I think I'll get this. Do I do stocks though?
No, stop payments.
What's that? What's stop payments?
So basically, like when stop payments are, when you make a payment with the company and you no longer want those payments to continue, so you can call up the bank to place a stop payment. Or when you write a check and you lost that check or that party lost the check, you can call the bank to place a stop payment on that check.
So that's for $30 a month.
No, no, that's a feature. You're asking me what the difference and what the benefits between the
Yeah,
business
but
fund.
like that's for $30 a month though. Like to prevent checks from going through.
No, the account is 29.95,
Uh huh.
right? However, those are the benefits. Basically, the first check order is for free. Stop payments are for free. Incoming domestic wires are for free. And then if you basically keep 15,000, the bank will not charge you $29.95.
Let's do this one.
That one, okay. Now is this a one right here?
Pardon?
Is that a one?
That's one.
Thank you.
Hey yo, so how's everyone doing? Today is actually the 28th. Sorry, the 27th of September. I'm currently at a rest area, so I do plan on heading to my next delivery point in a few hours, if not tomorrow. But meanwhile, while we're here, I um I want to talk about a few topics I may have thought about during the week regarding whether or not Adam and Eve were actually given a choice. So anyway, so the point I think I want to make today is whether or not Adam and Eve were aware of the choices they were giving when they were giving them, because the Bible says that it wasn't until they ate from the tree of life they became aware of their circumstance or situation and were ashamed. So does that mean that the entire time that they were in the Garden of Eden, it seemed like they were given a choice, or they understood the choices that they were given, meaning when God asked them to not eat from the fruit of life or the tree of life, they fully grasped what he was saying. And would it be possible that Satan may have actually given them the real insight that God hadn't? Because in my understanding, would it be possible from my understanding, I believe that God may have created human beings without giving them complete understanding intentionally, because he may have wanted them to, he wanted some form of ignorance in them in order to keep them probably unaware of their circumstance or situation, to therefore have them worship him constantly, worship God constantly. But why would he want to do something like that if he's saying that he has given human beings a choice? So, assuming, for example, assuming you have a child, a 1 month old child, or however old child, and then you can, possibly, probably, compare and contrast at different age groups or whatever. But I think the age group we're going to use today would be maybe like a 1 month old or something, maybe a year-old child. You give that 1 year old child an apple, an orange, and an orange, and to you, the parent, you're looking at the apple and orange, and you're fully aware. You can act aware that it's an apple and orange. You can grasp that it's an apple and orange. In your mind, those are two different things. Those are options. But in the mind of a toddler or a 1 year old child, that apple and orange is no different from an actual rock. Two painted rocks. So how can you possibly say that you gave that 1 year old child an option when they aren't aware of the items that they are holding in their hands? When it's damn near impossible for them to grasp the concept of an apple and orange and an orange. Have you actually given them a choice? Or would it be coercion? Alright? Because a choice without full in-depth understanding of the choice that they are given would be considered coercion, or to an extent deceit, because you're not fully making them aware of these options that you are saying you gave them. Alright, so anyway, so that's one. So apparently, from my understanding, God created mindless robots. If I want to, use other metaphors or whatever, God created mindless robots without a CPU or whatever may be used for a robot to grasp their situation or circumstances. God created mindless robots to roam the earth, and Satan came along and provided insight by giving or asking them to eat from the apple of life or tree of life. So for those that may be into the things of this planet, maybe love, experiences, and understanding, I would assume that you guys would have Satan to thank for that, because if not for Satan giving Adam and Eve the apple that they ate from to then get understanding, we will be mindless robots roaming around this earth, just unaware that we are probably on this earth, grazing like wild animals, reproducing like wild animals, doing everything like wild animals. Anyway, that's one. That's because that's part of the point. That was part of Like my okay. So Satan gave us understanding, wisdom, awareness. God hid wisdom, awareness, understanding. So before you think that you are serving someone that is fully transparent with you, go back, look at the scripture, make sure you are fully grasping whatever the Bible is saying, because I personally may need to go back and look at it, but from my understanding in the Bible, there are many accounts where God is hiding information and Satan is providing information. Alright? Other than the Bible and other religious manuscripts such as the Quran and maybe the Hebrew books or whatever, what other resources does God provide in comparison to what Satan provides? Mm. Another point I wanted to make was, what is the difference between selling your soul to the devil and giving your life to Christ? Well, in my opinion, they are both the same thing, just different wordings. One may say they're selling their soul to the devil because it just seems a lot harsher than actually like giving your life to God as a higher entity or whatever, only because they make us believe that selling your soul to the devil seems much more of a punishment than a blessing compared to giving your life to Christ. Anyway, also the process of selling your soul to the devil seems more practical compared to giving your life to Christ. To me personally, I think that even though they both mean the same thing, the processes are quite different depending on where you go. In the Christian realm, when you are giving your life to Christ, what are you doing? Either you are probably giving 10% of what you've earned that month, prayer, worship. Typically, those are three things that giving your life to Christ revolves around or requires. Because we're offering, and the four of those things, typically those are the routes that typically most Christians follow or go through when they want to request anything from God, versus, which in my humble opinion may seem to be, and then the 10%, for the most part, is optional. Most Christians typically aren't giving 10% in church anyway. A lot of them aren't giving 10% in church anyway, though they may give offering. But as far as the 10% tithes, a lot of people aren't giving their 10%. Versus the devil, where it seems a lot more practical, because when it comes to the devil, usually it's often a fair exchange, and because a lot of people are, for the most part, unwilling to commit to a sacrifice, it of may seem like a harsher requirement to them that aren't willing to proceed with the practical means of receiving what they want. For example, when the devil says, I will give you heaven and earth, technically what he means when he says he's going to give you heaven and earth, he means he's going to give you what you asked for something an equal of it, what you asked for something of equal exchange. That's a lot more practical. It's just like you coming to my crib and then asking me for $10,000 or something. In reality, I'm going to ask you for something as collateral that is equivalent to $10,000. And then before I then give you the $10,000, or before I take the item that is worth $10,000, that's a fair exchange. And then for the most part, a lot of people aren't willing to separate themselves from the things that they own in order to get what they want. So the logical framework for them, for most people, would be to go the easier route, where it seems like they can optionally give tithes and then maybe give a few dollars here and there every once in a while for offering, and then gets whatever that they want, therefore not really making it a fair exchange. When they feel that they can cry, beg, pray, do all those things, and then God is supposed to answer, the devil is like, hell no. If you want something from me, you got to give in return of equal value. So I think that's another issue that most people may find hard to commit to. So in reality, they've stigmatized the devil's process, when in truth we all operate in the same way. In reality, like, you can't just walk into a store and put 10 cents on the table and walk out with a big ass television. In Christianity, that's what they do. But with the devil, he operates exactly how we operate in real life. If a TV is worth $10,000, you got to put $10,000 down to get the TV. So they've stigmatized the way the devil operates, therefore stigmatizing how we operate in reality, versus glorifying the way Jesus or God operates, when in reality we do not operate in that way, or that form of transactions or whatnot. So my understanding is Satan actually forces you to put something up of value in exchange for something of equal value, a sacrifice. My other point is both perform rituals to get what you want. Satan's rituals are done in the present time, while God claims to have given his only son as a sacrifice. Okay, so these are my notes that I wrote down. Alright, so to that point, I would like to say both require rituals to be done, and both require sacrifices to be made to get what you want in return. Satan's sacrifices and rituals are done in real time. in order for you to get what you want from Satan, you must commit to a ritual. And assuming the ritual is done in the right way, you then proceed to committing to a sacrifice. Going back to what we were saying, most people aren't willing to depart from or commit to things that will then require them to either exert a lot of energy and commitment or material things, which are supposed to be the sacrifice. Most people aren't willing to commit to all those things. So rather than actually following through with the ritual, depending on how critical the ritual may be, most people aren't willing to commit to either the ritual and the sacrifice process. But with Christianity, that's with Satan. But with Christianity in real time. So with Christianity, it says that the ritual and sacrifices have been made. So all you have to do is ask. And what it's asking, depending on the context, you are more or less begging, because you haven't actually put anything down to get anything in return. So you, as a Christian, or not necessarily, because a lot of Christians may take it like you're talking crazy, but in reality, that's the truth of the matter. Your God has so-called perform the ritual. The ritual being, you must Jesus was given to this earth or this planet. Jesus being God's only begotten Son. God gave His only Son as it, and during that, okay, so the ritual was, Jesus was born through Mary, a virgin woman, lived his entire life up until the day he was supposedly sacrificed. And after being sacrificed, he was then put in a tomb. After being put in a tomb, he then rose again after 3 days. After rising and then reliving after 3 days, he went straight to heaven. That was the ritual. Birth up until the day he died, and then relived again. That was supposed to be an entire ritual. And then the sacrifice per se was dying upon the cross. So all that, so to speak, was already done on your behalf, therefore making the process much more easier for those that are willing to follow God or Jesus Christ. And being as human beings, we tend to look for the easy way out. We look to we do in our weighing and contracting or contrasting, whatever, and we see, okay, why would I be willing to put up my $10,000 TV as collateral to get $10,000 when I can possibly get $10,000 from this dude over here by just asking? Okay? Because technically that's all you have to do to get what you want. And then in many cases, if you keep begging, if you beg hard enough, you might end up getting what you want. And why we're saying if you keep begging, you may get what you want, because there are many Christians that go their lifetimes without actually getting what they request or what they pray for. But because begging and crying and praying seems like a much more easier thing to do, they proceed with begging, crying, and everything else. But in reality, if you look at it, if you are willing to commit to the sacrifice and putting down collateral, proceeding with the ritual and putting down the collateral being a sacrifice with Satan, and because you more than likely get what you want sooner, and because his process is done in real time, you are more than likely going to get what you requested. You'll more than likely get what you actually requested for, as long as you ask in the right way. Because people like to say, oh, you ask from Satan, but then you get what you want plus probably more or something attached to it. Bro, we sign terms conditions every single day, and in those terms conditions we automatically agree to the terms conditions, not reading the actual terms and conditions. And many times in those terms conditions there are clauses that protect the person giving out providing the service, whether it be a bank loan, whether it be a app, whether it be a software. There are always terms conditions with clauses there to protect or in benefit of the person providing the service. We do it all the time. There isn't any different. There is no difference between you signing a deal with the devil and him adding a clause in the back end in benefit to his services. Common sense. So we do it all the time, every single day. But when it comes to Satan, all of a sudden, oh dang, he's doing fucking worst. Fuck out of here. Anyway, in order to get what you want from Satan, you just gotta be specific. You need to be specific because he's a business person. That's why the word sell is usually used when transacting with the devil. Sell, just like any other business transaction, has to be specific. If you are making a business transaction with another party, you lay out what you want and they lay out what they want. And if you are not aware of reading business contracts, they can easily slide a clause in there that still benefits them in the long run. So why don't you learn to be as transactional as they are? If you put down your request, they put down the request, but then read the fine clause behind it, the fine print behind it, and be like, oh, that's in there. If that's in there, then I want something else behind that as well. That's all that it is. And then if Satan is willing to agree to the terms, then you guys go along with the contract. That's all that it is. People tend to make things harder than they are. Okay, so my point in this situation is, just think of Satan's transactions, the word sell, when it comes to selling your soul to the devil, and giving your life to Christ as the exact same thing, but just different terminology. One has stigma, one is strongly stigmatized, like people just look at it as the worst thing known to man. Another one just seems more of a willing gesture. Satan selling, you're giving your life to Satan, versus selling your soul to Satan versus giving your life to Christ. One is stigmatized, highly stigmatized, looked down upon as the worst thing you can possibly do to get anything that you want out of life, versus of being a willing participant and a gesture. That's the only difference. Also, when you're weighing and contrasting the difference between both acts, you are literally doing the exact same thing. The only thing is, with Satan, you're performing rituals and giving a sacrifice in real time, versus versus dealing with God. He has already committed to a sacrifice or a ritual and performed the sacrifice, performed the ritual, and have given the sacrifice, his son, in order for you to get what you request. Okay? And now that I'm actually thinking about it, why do you think that with God most requests take much longer to be answered versus dealing with the devil? It's just like getting something for okay. It's just like getting a free item versus a paid item. If you get paid for an item, you are more than likely going to get the item on time, versus getting a free item, which is more than likely going to take much more time to receive, because there are individuals in line that are also begging for free items too, and have been begging much more longer than you as an individual. So you asking for a free item will more than likely take much more longer to receive than receiving a paid item. So going back to my point, think of Satan's resources, because they are resources depending on how you use them, as Amazon. If you perform the ritual the right way and give the right sacrifice of equal value to what you are requesting, then you are more than likely that's a business transaction with Amazon, with their $13 with their monthly subscriptions. You are more than likely going to get your item the same day or next day, depending on how far you live away from the Amazon facility. Meanwhile, look at the other party as US Mail. With US Mail, there are a lot more people likely sending packages through US Mail, and because there isn't a subscription, you aren't paying for the service per se. How much do you pay for a letter to be sent? A letter to be sent, a few cents, $1, versus a $13 subscription, $15 depending on who you are and where you live. The subscription can vary. You're paying for an actual item. You're paying for the item, and you're also paying for the subscription. So those are two payments you're making, versus paying for a U.S. package to be sent. You are liable package is liable to get lost in transit. Just think of it like that. Anyway, I just wanted to make that point. You can compare and contrast that way. So those are the two topics I think I wanted to touch on today. One being Adam and Eve were not actually given a choice when the choices that were given to them weren't explained. So it's not possible to give someone a choice when you haven't explained what those choices are. That's conniving. That's deceitful. That's unfair. And technically that's what God may have done to Adam and Eve. He says he gave them choices when in reality he hadn't explained what those choices were, and the people that he gave the choices to weren't able to even comprehend what the choices were, because it wasn't until Satan came along, presented them with the opportunity to be as aware of their situation as their maker is of their situation when they eat of the fruit, where they then made fully where they made a whole, where they made whole, because it wasn't until Satan came along they weren't whole. They were just freaking capsules, empty capsules. Satan came along, gave them the fruit, they ate, then were they made fully aware of who they were. And that's what made God mad. He became mad when they became aware of who they were. Now they weren't mindless entities walking around having to worship a God that refused to give them insight. And in reality, just imagine your government doing that to you. Because literally that's what they do. They give you a law and tell you must abide by this law, and aren't giving you the full rundown of the law. But then when you become aware of the law itself and read on the law and become aware of what the law actually entails or what it's for, and when you uprise against it, they get mad and want to shut it down. They want to send the military on you. They want to throw you in jail. They want to put you in handcuffs for inciting a riot because you are aware of what they're up to. Hence, God was aware. Adam and Eve became aware of God, became aware of what God was up to, and when He found out that they became aware of what He was up to, He kicked them out. You're only welcome here when you are unaware. What the fuck? You have to be an evil son of a bitch to kick your creation out for becoming aware of who you are. You have to really be an evil motherfucker to kick your creation out when they become available of who you are. And that's what God did. He kicked them out upon realizing they became aware of His intentions. Why would you kick your kids out, your creation out, if you really and truly intended for them to be there for a good reason? Okay, so anyway, if anything, if they became aware of His intentions, and if He had good intentions, He would be like, okay, yeah, that's the truth. Okay, fine. Now let me break it down for you. This is what I intend to do. This is what My purpose was for creating you, not kicking them out, because they became aware of what he really wanted, what he really created them for, to be mindless robots, to worship him for selfish reasons. Anyway, that was the first point. The second point was to the difference between selling your soul to the devil and giving your life to Christ. Just look at them as both. Just look at both of them as similar tasks. They're both the same freaking thing, but one has a negative stigma. Has been negatively stigmatized to make it look as the worst thing you could possibly do to get what you want, and other as as you being a willing participant, and as done as a gesture. Okay. And there's a point I just thought about previously, but want to bring it back again. One, so one is made to seem like when you, okay, just think of it like this. You come to me for $10,000. I request something of equal value before I then give you the $10,000. We both agree to the terms, but upon me giving you the $10,000, you choose to run off with $10,000. But when it's my turn to get what I requested in the agreement, you aren't anywhere to be found. Right? That's what. Okay, so to that point, selling your soul is highly stigmatized. To the devil is highly stigmatized. But when you run off on the devil after making an agreement, that is a good thing, right? But the other gesture, giving your life to Christ, is exactly the same thing. When you give your life to Christ, ask for everything in return, but then when God gives you what you if it so happens that the U.S. mail eventually makes it to your home address, you get what you want, but then choose to not acknowledge what was agreed in terms, such as serving God and doing all these other things. It's called backsliding. You see the difference? One is looked upon as a bad, good thing when you run off from the plug, but then the other is looked as a bad thing when you run off from the plug. You can run off on Satan for giving you what you want for equal exchange in real time next day, but then you can't run off on God, backsliding, when he takes much longer to deliver, maybe months prior or years later on, and is you just can't. It's just looked at as a bad thing, when in reality they're both the same exact thing. Anyway, that's what I just thought about just now, and it's like, oh, okay. I thought about it prior to now, but it made a lot more sense to me. So one has a negative connotation to it, the other one is more generally accepted. So anyway, checking with you guys later. Peace.